This video is for Digital Society students and teachers who are doing the internal assessment, the inquiry project. And this is an updated guide. I've done these guides previously and there's blog posts about internal assessment, but it's May 2025. And as a result of the results from May 2025 examination period and moderator comments and some being able to get my hands on some exemplars, I've updated the template. I've also updated a checklist as well, and so I've got a guide, a checklist. Here it is here. So let me just show you. There's a guide, how to get a 7. There's a checklist, so when you've created your internal assessment project, you can check to see if it's up to standard. But this is also a template. So I've just created this today. So the template, the concept with the template is that it's for you to copy and paste and use it as your working document as you work through the internal assessment project. Okay, so if you go to this website, ibdigitalsociety.com, and if you go to the blog posts, it's this first one here. So this is the template. So how it starts off is with phase 1, and that is you selecting your topic and also starting to think and craft your research question. So first of all, you need to decide which concept you're going to focus on. You also need to work out what content area you'll focus on, and of course which context. So you need to, at the early stages, you can probably just do some broad brush strokes and just pick some of the areas. Just one of the areas. So for example, with concept, you pick change. But as you get deeper into the project, we need to get a little bit more specific with the 3 C's, and I'll address that a little bit later on. So that's the first thing. Second thing, start thinking about your inquiry question. Now, having helped guide students through this for many years, this is just, don't think you're going to get your perfect inquiry question first up. It's going to evolve and it's going to change, and you're just going to continually edit this as you go through the research project. That's perfectly fine, and that's part of the process. Now, the other thing that's really important is when you're writing in your project document, you also need to justify why you're focusing on a certain context or content. And you need to justify it basically. So if you specifically focus on one context, you need to justify it. The easiest way to justify it is, your justification is basically, this focus area is important for me to answer the research question. So therefore, you need to make sure your research question and the context, content, and context are completely in sync with the research question. So therefore, you're going to be continually revising that as you go through the project. Now, back to the research question. So in the early days, just come up with a research project, but don't worry too much about the exact wording right at the start. That can come later, and it will develop later as the deeper you get into your research project. Okay, the step 3 is coming up with a real world example. Now, one feedback that was received from the IB moderators is about the currency, making sure that the real world example is current. So we're trying to aim for something within the last 5 years, basically. So I put 2021 just because it's 2025 now, but I'm assuming some people might be looking at this next year and the year after. So try and think within the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years. 3 would be fantastic. But the way research works is sometimes an event happens. So for example, AI is launched to the world. It takes a little bit of time for the technology to be released, and then people to start using it, and then researchers to start to analyze and write research papers. So there is a bit of a delay. So you don't want anything that's super current, because there's no research on that. So you need something that's 3 to 5 years old, which has allowed researchers to thoroughly research and write papers on it. So you just got to get the timing of your real life example just right. Nothing too old, nothing too new. Okay, let's go to phase 2. Now, phase 2 is kind of the bits in blue are the bits for you to do. So if you could copy and paste this, you need to have a research title. Now, I've got this actually, I don't know if you really need to, but I think it's good practice because this is the same as your extended essay. You have a research title and then you've got your inquiry question. And then because you've got two things, you can kind of, they can work together to kind of add more meaning. So if you've got your research question, you can add a little bit more meaning by giving it your paper, your project, a research title as well. So I would encourage a research title and a research question. Now, this is Criterion A. So you must have your research question. You must then have your real world example. Now, your real world example needs to be identified, and then it needs some kind of an explanation, which in your explanation needs to be firmly linked to your inquiry question. It also needs to be clearly linked to the 3 C's as well. So that is your explanation. Then you need to focus in your 3 C's. So 50 words talking about which concept and how it links to the inquiry question. Then do the same for content, then do the same for context. Now, some feedback from moderators. They mention you must have the actual specific number. And the moderator comment also, one moderator comment I read was also that you need to use the wording or the subtitle. Now, you don't need to do it word for word, but you can actually use these words within your description or your justification. But you do need that specific number. Okay, section B are the claims and perspectives. So section A is 300 words. Section B, 1,200 words. And actually put, when you've finished, and when it's time to submit your project, be sure to do a word count and put the number in there as well for the examiners to actually see that you're within the prescribed word limit. Okay, section B, 3 sources. You need 3 quality sources, and they need to be recent. Not too recent, not too old, but within like the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years is what we're looking for. They need to be academic, not just some website you found, but they need to be like academic journals with some rigorous researchers involved. So all 3 sources need to be very high quality sources. Now, it seems to be, now that we've had a few years of digital society, OPVL seems to be a nice little guide to work through this. So if you don't know what that is, O is the origin and the purpose, O and P. The V is the value. What's the value of this source? And then what are some of the limitations? So OPVL is are your subheadings. And then, of course, which is really important, this is where you get your marks, is the claims and perspectives. What are the claims and what are the perspectives of that source? Then you do it again for source 2, and then you do it again for source 3. Okay, now we are moving into this research methodology, in particular with primary research. So that was one thing that was evident with students who got 7s, is they had some good quality primary research. So you want a little bit of quantitative, which is things like surveys. So you can do some kind of a survey, and then some qualitative, which is some kind of an interview with an expert. So you've got to work out how you're going to get that done. So just keep in mind the secondary research and the primary should be nicely in sync and should work together nicely. Okay, phase 4 is when you do your multimedia presentation. It's 10 minutes. That's a mistake. Shouldn't be, say, 15 minutes. It's 10 minutes. Don't go over 10 minutes. If it goes over 10 minutes, examiners will stop watching. So whatever you've done beyond 10 minutes, no one's going to see. So be sure to keep to that limit. Okay, so here is a structure. First of all, you need some kind of an introduction. Now, in your introduction, you need something that's a bit engaging at the start, something that piques people's interest. And you can easily do this with things like statistics. Did you know that 27% of blah, 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 blah? It's like, oh, that's an interesting statistic. Or you may even ask a question. Have you ever wondered why, when you use Duolingo, there's lots of sounds? So you actually you're trying to get the person who's watching your multimedia to actually get interested. So pique their interest at the start, and then deliver your inquiry question. This inquiry project is about blah, 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 blah. This is the inquiry question and a little bit of an explanation of the inquiry. And here is also, right at the start, is when you specifically focus on which type of digital technology are you focusing on, and if you need to, just explain a little bit. So this is where you might need to do a little bit of foundation knowledge, so that whoever's viewing your video feels like they're included. So just be aware, the examiners aren't experts on every single field in technology. So if you're doing something like gamification features on fitness apps, you might need to explain, what is gamification? What is a reward system? What are fitness apps? So just give some brief definitions and explanations and examples, and then you can launch into your deeper research, your deeper inquiry. Okay, so that is at the start. That's the introduction. So you've got to squeeze all that in within 2 to 3 minutes. Next part is your analysis and evaluation. Now you can start with your secondary research, or you can start with the primary. Here, this template I have suggested start with the primary research. What did you find? Who did you interview, or your surveys? Who did you survey, and what did you find? What were the key findings? Now, also, just notice when you collect some data visualization is actually one of the areas of digital society. So you should have a good understanding and skills with how to collect data and how to present data as well. So it's very easy for the viewer to understand this data, and adds meaning because of the visuals as well. So what are the key findings? And then the secondary research, talk about your secondary research. This is where you can link with your 3 sources, but also you want to expand on your 3 sources. One of the problems with some of the internal assessments in the past is in their multimedia, they really heavily focused on the 3 sources and didn't really move on from that. So there's 3 sources of the foundation, and then you need to connect it with your primary research, and then also link it with some other research as well. So it's kind of building upon those 3 main sources. Now, one of the favorite words of digital society is impacts. So when we're talking about digital technology, you really, really need to focus on the impacts on people, impacts on communities or groups of people, and also you want to talk about different stakeholders. Now, when you start talking about different stakeholders, you talk about different perspectives as well. So these are all digital society magic words: impacts, communities, people, stakeholders, perspectives. So if you're using these kind of phrases and exploring these kind of notions, then you're on track for a 7. Now, conclusion. One major problem: too many people submit internal assessment or their multimedia project, and the examiner doesn't know when the conclusion actually starts. It's like, sometimes you're listening and it's like, is this a conclusion, or are they still making some points from their research? So please, please, please make it clear. And the easiest thing to do is on the screen is just put up conclusion. And allow some time. See here in this guide, I've allowed for 3 to 4 minutes. Just be aware, your analysis and evaluation is worth the same amount of marks, 6 marks, as the conclusion. Now, in the past, students have only done a brief conclusion, and they can't get 6 marks if they're only spending 1 minute on their conclusion. So give yourself a chunk of time for the conclusion. It's very, very important. Now, also, with your conclusion, you need to talk about some emerging trends and any new insights. And this is not just from your imagination, it needs to be research-based as well. So this is where I was talking about sometimes with technology, the technology appears and then users start using it and then researchers start analyzing it. For your conclusion, you're in the early stages. So you're the one that's talking about new technology that's just appeared, that's just being released, which hasn't been analyzed yet. Or there's some new technology that is being developed, and here's the source. This is the company, or this is the organization that is developing this new technology. Or here's a new field of technology that is being used in the health sector now. It's just being launched. They're doing trial periods right now. But then, because this is the end, this is your conclusion, you need to apply some critical thinking as well. So why are you talking about this new technology? And that's where you could Demonstrate your critical thinking and ask questions like, when this new technology is released, it will be interesting to analyze the results from the different perspectives of different stakeholders. And this could be magical, or it could be problematic. So you talk about this is where you're demonstrating your synthesis and your critical thinking, and your evaluation and analysis as well, which is really important if you want to get a 7. Okay, next part, the media and tools. Okay, you need to specify which tech tools you're actually using. Now, just be aware, when you're using different tech tools, whatever your presentation is, the visuals should be matching it and enhancing the meaning. So just be aware of that when you're constructing your multimedia project. Now, what's we got? Now, let's move on to phase 5. Phase 5 is when you do your bibliography. Just be aware there's 2 distinct bibliographies. So there is the academic sources. Where did you get all your, where did you find all your research? What are all the sources that you used for your project? There's also, and this is where you talk about your primary research as well. And then your list number 2 is about the media. So when you put together your multimedia project, there's going to be some visuals. Maybe there's videos, there's animation, there's still photographs, or a combination of all. You need to cite all of those that you use. Now, just a word of warning, some students get a bit carried away and they put 1 million photographs in their multimedia. And then they've got hours and hours and hours to try and do all the citations. So just be a little bit careful when you're putting together your visuals, so the videos or images, whatever it might be. You don't want to spend weeks and weeks citing all of your amazing visuals. So just keep it under control. You also need, so with your bibliography, it needs to list all the sources. Also need to cite all the videos or images that you've used. You also need to talk about which tech tools that you use to create your multimedia as well. Okay, so they're the different phases. Now I've got here is the quality control checklist. So before you submit, you're going to go through this list to make sure you've got everything, and you can just tick them off the list. And if you don't have it, fix it up. So that is the quality control list. Now we move on to this self-assessment rubric. Now I've also got that other post, which is more detailed than this. This is one of the challenges of the IB Digital Society assessment rubric, if you want, or assessment criteria, is it's so brief and short. It's sometimes a bit hard to work out because it's so brief. Sometimes it's a bit hard to work out, am I actually meeting this one or not? So that's why I would recommend using the other checklist that I did, and I'll show you that in a moment after I finish here. So that's the very, very basic assessment rubric, but I'd encourage you to use the other one. Okay, when it's time to submit, here's what you're going to be submitting. Your document's going to have a cover page, and then on the cover page, then you're going to move on to your process document, and it's going to have your inquiry focus, section 1, which is about your inquiry question, your real-world example, and your connection to the 3 C's. And then the next part about the 3 sources. This is Criterion B. You're going to have your claims and perspectives, the 3 sources there. And your document also needs a bibliography as well. You're then going to say that's one document. It's going to be a PDF. The other thing you're going to submit is your multimedia project. Now it should be an MP4 or something equivalent of MP4. Now when teachers need to submit your project to the IB website, the IBO, it doesn't take any videos over 500 megabytes. So when you submit to your teacher, keep it under 500 megabytes. Now also just be aware that you may need to submit some of your supporting material, so that some kind of an appendix, maybe there's a survey that you conducted. That can be put into your process document as well, add it on at the end. So you're submitting one PDF and one multimedia project. That is it. Now one last thing I want to just show you is about the assessment. So if we go back to all the blog posts, so that's the template I've just talked to you about. Now this one here is your checklist. So it's a very detailed checklist. So Criterion A, here is a very, 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 very detailed checklist of all the things that you need to have. And then we've got Criterion B. So this is when you're finished, check to see if your project is 7 worthy. Anyway, that's it. Good luck. I hope you get a 7.